All right, you maggots, listen up. Some of you like stories, some of you don't. But here, notice, notice this mercury is moving back and forth. Now, normally, if this was a sealed glass container, the mercury would stick to the glass. All right, and this switch is not a sticker. That's what we used to call them. If the mercury uh, would stick to the glass, if two things, air got in the switch, or the coating on the inside of the glass didn't take. Now you say coating, yeah. I believe the chemical was called xylene and dry film. It was a 1 gallon bottle of xylene and a smaller pint of dry film. And every couple hours, I had to mix a new batch. Now picture this old factory, 3 floors. It's an old Thomas Edison building. Gray is the color on the inside. Even the beams, everything's painted gray. The floors are wooden floors. The mercury, when you talk to somebody in this company, you always held your hand over your coffee or your drink because mercury, as they would walk through along the floor, mercury would come down from the cracks in the floor and drop into your coffee. And you say, well, where did mercury come from? Well, the girls would spill mercury. They would drop some switches and it would break. And mercury, if you've ever dropped it on the floor, it sort of disappears. Now the bottom floor, when the guy would mop the floor at night and it would get wet, all the mercury would congeal into a puddle. Now he's supposed to pick it up, but he didn't. So he just lets it evaporate. And every floor has mercury in the air as a gas. So I want to talk about the event that happened. So every few hours I have to mix a 1 gallon bottle of xylene with a pint of dry film. And I go over to Evelyn, the woman's name's Evelyn, she has since passed on. Um, and I'm talking to her, and she says, I think I'm going to have enough, uh, she called it dry film. Yeah, she called it dry film. Even though the smaller bottle was dry film, the big bottle was xylene, what we called it dry film. And this switch would have the base would be on it and pressed with the 2 electrodes. Then it would come up. There'd be constriction here, and then another piece. And the constriction is where it spins around and a flame hits it and narrows it down so it can be tipped off with a torch. So she would inject a needle and shoot the dry film into this before it had the mercury, and then she would turn it over and put it on this other needle that had air coming up, and the bubbles would come up and drive out the dry film and leave a coating in there. Then it would go into an oven and it would bake, and it would leave like a cloudy residue on the glass. And then when the switch got tipped off, mercury added, then tipped off, then what would happen is it would become clearer looking. And then the mercury, if it worked good, it would do that. It wouldn't stick. So I'm standing there. She says, I think I'm going to have enough dry film. All of a sudden, a pop noise. And I look over, and it's like somebody shot the 1 gallon bottle of dry film, or xylene, with a BB gun. And it's pouring down, and it's on some shelving, and there's napkins there. There's newspapers there. There's cardboard there. And I said to her, evacuate the building. I yell over to the lead woman, evacuate the building. On the way out, pull the fire alarm. That's what I told her to do. All right. And then I told another woman to tell Gary and we call him the cleanup guy that I have a problem. So they leave. I'm expecting the fire department to come. Gary comes up and he's helping me mop the xylene up. There are open flames everywhere. You have to picture these torches. There's torches, there's machines with open flame, and I basically have a gallon of gasoline on the floor, and it's going through the floor to the next level, to the next floor of it's going through the actual wood floor to the next floor of the building. So Gary's mopping up. I tell the other maintenance worker to go down to the next floor, find out where it's dripping through, and mop there. I look up, and there's all the women back working again. And I lost it. I told the woman, what did I tell you? Well, I didn't think we needed to pull the fire alarm. We needed to call the fire department. I said, you're out of your freaking mind, you know? So anyway, I wouldn't talk to her the rest of the night. To me, she was so stupid. I gave her orders. That's when I decided she's going to go. And so the one maintenance guy, he went down to the next floor. He mopped it all up. So we had it under control. I called Ray Lynch up. Ray Lynch is deceased now. I can mention his name. I called Ray up, and he's in charge of the factory, of the building itself. I call him up. He comes in, and he's being a jerk. Well, what did you do to break the bottle? I said, I didn't do anything to that bottle. I said, I'm talking to Evelyn, and that bottle just it popped. And you got to picture this building. It's an old factory. You're not allowed to have any air conditioning because you have all these open flames. You couldn't have any, we had little fans, but you couldn't have any air movement or it would mess up the temperature of heating the glass and the whole thing. So you're in sweltering heat, and that's the way it was. So this bottle the pressure built up in the bottle and it popped. So this guy's standing there and he's like calling me a liar. Oh man, you don't ever want to do that. If I drop a bottle of xylene and it breaks, and I would call something like that, basically I would say that. And that's the way I am. Well, this guy didn't really know me that well. So he's overlooking at the bottle, and there you can tell basically all the pieces are there. It just cracked and it popped. And all the xylene ran out. It ran down, it got all the napkins for production. Well, anyway, so all that had to be put out in the garbage. I made sure the guy put it in a dumpster that was away from the building just in case it went up in the middle of the night. I did everything I had to do. So we leave, I double check everything. I closed the building up for the night because that's what I was doing. They got rid of everybody else. I would check the alarm system, and then with the maintenance guy, and then we make sure at 10 o'clock, we would make sure we had continuity. There were people that would come back through that building, and they'd knock the light beams for the alarm system out of alignment. So we would close up and leave, and the building wouldn't be alarmed, and then they'd come back and rob the building. So so every night at 10 o'clock, we would check the alarm system, and I knew where all the light beams were, and I could walk down the aisle. I showed the other guy how to do it too. When the light beam's good, you can run your hand. They shot diagonally down the hallways, and you can run your hand. And if you listen very carefully, you could hear the relay, and we would know what floor the light beam had been pushed or touched. And we get the alarm working, go down to the main key area, and turn this to test. And we would have continuity. And then again at 12 o'clock, when we were leaving, we would test the continuity and set the alarm. Now, one night, we had no continuity. And I went through the building, and it turned out there was like this garage door that, like on a regular service center, a garage door for a gas station. And there was a little door built in the glass, roll-up door, and the door was left open. And I went out there and I walked around, and I said, somebody's been in here, obviously, because we tested at 10. Now at 12 it wasn't working. So we closed the door, we threw the latch, we checked for continuity, and we left. And I told the boss, and he just looked at me. Well, the next night I went there, basically that door was open again, and there was a set of, I got them right here, the bench legs. That bench leg, see it there? That bench leg, the two of them were outside. The person came back, snuck into the building, took two bench legs, put them outside, left that door open. Well, actually, they closed the door and latched it, but this time there was a breakaway switch wire on it. I found that, I put that back, we had continuity. And the next night, the same thing. No continuity. I went out there. There was another set of bench legs. I took them too. Put them in my car, took them home. So somebody was coming back at night. Well, during the day, they were taking bench legs off something. Coming back at night, putting them out in the parking lot at a certain time, and then coming back in the dark or the next morning early, and I was stealing them from them. And I told the boss, I said, yeah, there was another set legs out there, and I took them. I took them home, and he was trying to figure out who was stealing them. But anyway, but I want to get back to the Xylene popping and all that. So this guy Ray Lynch, he's really giving me a hard time. So the next day, I told you I come in about 4 o'clock, and I go right into my boss, and I'm telling him, and he goes, "Yeah," he says, "I looked at the bottle that popped," and he says, "It was a stress crack in the bottle." And I go, "Really?" I said, "You just come to that conclusion real quick." He says, "Well," he goes, "this guy Ziegler handled the Xylene downstairs, and we had a parts room and a supply room, and Ziegler ran it, and Ziegler was all upset because when he heard about a bottle just popping, he went outside and opened all the boxes that had the Xylene in them, and he found several with these big stress cracks in them. So I went down to see him, and he goes, he made them put them somewhere else. He didn't want to even be near them. He says, that's basically a gallon of gasoline. I said, yeah. So I told him the whole story. He goes, you got to be kidding. He says, she didn't pull the fire alarm, and she made everybody go back to work. I said, yeah. He says, did you get rid of her yet? I said, no, she'll be gone soon. And I got rid of her. But every couple of weeks, something stupid would happen like that. Like in your torches and all that, you had gas, oxygen, and low power air. That's the torch the girls tip off the switches with. And there's a vane motor. It's got a vane on it, and not an impeller, a vane. And it makes low pressure air. And the motor's going bad. And I come into work, and the boss, the tech during the day, he takes me down, and he shows me this motor. And it's overheating. It's smoking a little bit. And he goes, this should work through the night. So I said, you got to be kidding me. He goes, no. He says, if it should stop turning, the starter winding's bad. Here's a piece of rope. Put it around the shaft and pull it in this direction. And it'll start up again. He says, the starter winding's going bad. So I said, all right, what else could go wrong? So I go back up. And then later on that night, all the torches, all the flames in the room pop. I don't know if you've ever done any welding with acetylene torch and oxygen. Well, when the oxygen goes out or the gas goes out, I forget which one it is, it makes this loud exploding noise. Well, picture a room with a bunch of machines with flames, with tip-off torches. They all start exploding. And I said to the girls, all right, everybody out. I get them near the staircase so they can exit the building. Now I go out and I go down through the fire escape. And I get down to that motor. It's on fire. So I throw the breaker. The smoke's really thick. I go to come back up the fire escape, and I can't get out. It's locked. The fire escape is locked. So I have to go back down through the smoke, crawl along, go back up a different way, and back into our department, and call Ray Lynch, and call my boss. And they're kind of laughing. They thought it was really funny. So the next day, I blow in there at 4 o'clock, and I'm saying, my boss goes, that happens every so often. I said, what's the deal with the fire doors? He says, they break into this window downstairs in the bathroom, and then they come up through the fire escape, and they rob our mercury. That's what they were. We had guys that were stealing mercury and platinum. And I said, well, what's going on? He says, oh, we have these weights and locking systems. You can go out through the fire door, but you can't get back in. And I'm looking at this guy going, I had to crawl through the smoke. Hey, yeah. That's how they always say, yeah. So I was like, okay, the first chance I get to leave this company, I'm out of here. And they did. They laid my girls off just for a few months. See, in that company, they only hired the girls for 9 months at a time. Now, unemployment warned me about that company, but they wouldn't tell me what was wrong with it. So they lay my girls off, and they bring me on days. And then I go in the office, and he has this chart. And he wants me to sit with each girl and figure out what I did with the night shift he wants me to do with the day shift. And I said to him, I'm out of here. I said, I'm really sorry, but you're going to have to get somebody else. I left and I found another job. But every few weeks, something wacky would happen. Like I would give the girls out their paycheck on Thursday. So I'd hand them their checks. So Evelyn is putting the dry fill into these switches with the hypodermic needle. She has those gloves on, those plastic gloves. So she's all set up to do that operation, and she's doing it. and she looks at the top of her cubicle. It's got a fan motor and all that, and she says, "Just put my check there." And she never put the check up there before. I set the check down. As soon as I did, an exhaust fan pulled it out, shot it up into a tree outside the building. So I went out to get her check, and I yelled up to her. I said, "Just put a piece of paper out of the fan, and I can get an idea how high it flew, what part of the tree it was in." And that dopey lead girl starts throwing all kinds of napkins and shit. And all this stuff is being chopped up by the exhaust fan. It's coming down. And I'm screaming, "Please stop." I actually saw her check hanging on a branch. And I threw my sneaker up there to hit it out. And my sneaker, the shoelace wrapped around the branch. So I went back inside. I'm walking around with one shoe on. And I realized there was another guy in the building that shouldn't be there. But I think he had a fight with his wife, and he'd hang out there, and he would drink. And he'd come out with a bamboo pole, a couple of them. We taped them together. We were able to get the check. We were able to get my sneaker down. But that lead girl was so freaking stupid, and she had a big mouth. She was constantly calling other people stupid, but she was one for the books, as they would say. But I just want to tell you some of the stories. These crappy little factories. There were thousands of them in New Jersey, and I'd go for a job interview, and you'd go in there, and it's the same. And I'd say to them, "Is this an Edison building?" "Oh, yeah, this is an Edison building. This was part of this complex." As soon as you walked into one of those buildings, it was all wood, beams and posts, and wooden floor, and it was always had that same gray color. It was a bluish gray and no, it was some type of light turquoise. I won't say blue, but as soon as you walked in, you're like, "Oh, this is one of those places." And the workers look like they dropped out in 1940 or not. Yeah, 1940. And they're all about getting to be 50 years old. They worked in the factory from when they got out of after World War II. They all had similar stories, but it was interesting for a while. But you peek out, and then when the boss says, "Well, I want you to come on days, and I want you to do with the day shift what you did with the night shift," I was like, "Nah, I'm not going to do it." And he said to me, he says, "I can't fire anybody because I worked." He was a tech on a fire setter originally before he moved up, and he says, I really don't want to fire any of these people. I've known them for 20 years or whatever." And I said, "Well, I'm not doing it. I did it with my girls, my group, and because they took my girls and another group that was on the third floor, and they combined them, and they kept giving me more responsibility, more insanity. And when I took over the third floor girls, a lot of them couldn't speak English. They were very nice, but they made reed relays. I don't know if you ever took apart a reed relay. I could show you the inside of one of those. But in other words, they would run so many months. They'd be making these switches. They put them into stock or relays. They put them in the stock, and then they would normally lay the girls off. But see, now they brought them down and had me train them, and then they would put more mercury switches into stock. So when the women got laid off so they could take care of their children during the summer, that was the deal they had. They had enough switches in storage. They didn't tell me that I had only worked for 9 months. They didn't tell me that my girls wanted off during the summer to take care of their children. See, all the women that worked for me had children in high school, and they knew they were going to get laid off. They wanted to be laid off, and that's why unemployment didn't like that company, but nobody told me. And then I come home, I said, I could have took day shift, but I didn't want to lay people off. I told them what they wanted me to do. My father says, "It's good you get out of there," because he had heard from other people that worked there that mercury's really bad, and we know mercury's bad. My dad would always tell the Mad Hatter story, as mad as a hatter, because people that make hats used to use mercury and to treat the felt, to get it to stick up a certain way. So anyway, by handling mercury with your hand, it would get in your bloodstream. And like one person commented, there's no cure for mercury poisoning. Well, I want to tell you, all those women that worked around that mercury, they lived a pretty good ripe old age, and they were all heavy smokers. They made it into their late 80s. So I'm like wondering, smoking is definitely worse than mercury, working around mercury. If you don't handle the mercury with your bare hands. I tell you, I would take a job if it paid X amount of money and I would realize I'm going to learn something. And I saw those flames, and the guy hiring me goes, "You know what a Colex machine is?" I said, "Yeah, we had them in RCA." And he's looking at me. He goes, "You know how they work?" "Yeah, I know how they work." I had to be trained on stuff just in case I got bumped. In other words, you get bumped out of your union position, and you got to go work in the sealing department of RCA or that. So in other words, as time's going on, besides all the work I was doing, all the extra work, a guy would take you over for a tour of they called it the production. They would call it sealing section. RCA had all these ceilings. They had one building that only made 6 GH8s, which were RCA towards the end was using this one tube. I think they used like 6 of them in each television set, and they were terrible tubes. They were just junk. And, and the guy would say, the boss would say something. You got to go over there, and so and so's going to take you, and you got to go over to the sealing department and get an idea, just in case you get bumped and you want to stay on with RCA. So the first time they bumped me, I left. I was like, I'm out of here. I volunteer. I take the layoff. And they laid me off at a turn, and I got a settlement. I didn't even have to do the paperwork. My boss on the other side, the big boss, he filled my paperwork out. He forged my name. He put a grievance in for me, and I got a settlement that I didn't care. I said, I'm out of RCA. But I got bumped at a turn by mistake, and the company owes you money. Well, anyway, I got the money, and then I went to unemployment at the time, and they took that money, and then they give you back some of it over a period of time. But I had some really good opportunities for different types of products, processes, and I took them. And when you work in other companies, you realize that a lot of these things overlap. And then when you're working on something, you're not afraid to jump in there, because you got a sort of experience of a similar product. But making mercury switches, it was funny stuff. And then when you would tip off this switch, you had a torch that looked like that. It had 2 sides, and you would do this with it on each side of and then you would pull it, and it would form a long string, and then you would burn it back to the tip. And a lot of times when the girl goes to remove the second half from the rubber hose, it's got a rubber hose that uses baby oil, and she goes to put her finger near there to get the blank out, and the piece of glass would go under her fingernail, and she starts screaming. Now, picture this. Everybody's laughing and rolling on the floor because it's happened to everybody. I have to run over and pin the girl down, take her over to the microscope, and pull the piece of glass that's up under her fingernail out. And that was just standard procedure. And then after you get it done, this one woman that did it all the time, she'd smoke a cigarette, and then after about 20 minutes, she'd start laughing, because it is funny when it happens to you. Everybody's had it happen to them. I had it happen to me. I got glassed several times under the fingernail, and it is funny. It's like when you see somebody fall, you don't really want them to get hurt, but you feel it's funny to see them fall. And that's one of the things there. And the women, they all had children, and they worked there from 6 o'clock at night to 12 o'clock at night. And Thursday night, it would be like somebody's birthday. They'd always want extra time for their dinner. And we had our dinner delivered from local restaurants. Would just take the order. They knew who we were. They knew the guy knew he had to come to the big front door and ring the doorbell and wait for someone to come down from the 3rd floor and open the door and pay him. So, several times during the week, if there were enough people, we would order food out. I'd have a meatball sandwich or whatever. And then some nights, I would call home. My mother couldn't sleep. I'd call home and she put a pizza in for me in the oven. What the hell was it? A really good pizza. It's so good. Stouffer's pizza. It was one of them square Stouffer's pizza. I take that back. It was a Stouffer's French bread pizza, and the square pizza was, oh, now it was that company that went out of business. Well, anyway, I would call home, and my mother would put the oven on and pop a pizza in there for me, and I'd make it home just in time to take it out. But it was a night shift job, and you can really appreciate life when you work a night shift job and you're out of sync with the rest of the world. And when you do have a day off and you're talking to people, you're out of touch with everybody else. You know, everybody at the time they were watching the Waltons years ago, and when I come back off that night shift job, I put the Waltons on, and the kids had gotten so much bigger. It had been 2 seasons of Waltons change. I'm sitting there, I couldn't watch it anymore. The kids they were no longer cute little kids. They were, you know, their voices were changing and stuff like that. But night shift I was most nights I was the only man there with 30 women, and women can be really a pain in the ass. They fight amongst themselves. They'll pull a girl into the bathroom and beat her up. There's things that you have never experienced that I had experienced, and I think I told you about me breaking up a fight in RCA the first day on the job. 2 women were punching each other in the face, and I got between it, and I got in trouble for that. The union guy, well, you're new here, but anytime you see 2 women fighting, you stay out of it, because 10 minutes later, they've let their frustrations out. They're shaking hands. You know, you break it up. Now they're mad at you. If it's a really bad fight, we send them home for a week. There was a whole procedure. No one told me that I was on the floor with women in RCA. Half the floor, well, half the top floor in my area was women that when they went through menopause, something happened to them. They become a little crazy, and the other departments didn't want to put up with them, so they put them upstairs with us. And I didn't know. No one told me. And the guy next to me, the lead tech, he just started laughing on my 3rd day. He's laughing. He goes, you know, I thought I should have told you. I want to kill you. Joe Toron, he's deceased now. I'm going to kill you, Joe. One of these days, I'm going to kill you. But when you work a variety of different places, companies, and you get involved, and I told you, I don't go in there as just a peon worker. I worked a peon job when I was in high school, and then when I was in tech school. So when I left tech school, I already had experience. And when I would go into a company, I didn't start at the very bottom. But you do start sort of at the bottom. You work your way up. Company gets bought out. The owner's son takes over. There's a whole plenty of ways it can go bad for you when you're in electronics. You know, we lost the contract. You know, you come up on the company, several people in New Jersey, if you ever read the news, they come up on the company and it's padlocked. And on it's a crappy little piece of paper telling you that we went bankrupt. They just did that like 3 years ago. It was a trucking company. I won't guess the name because I might get the wrong one. But that a few years ago, a company went bankrupt, and they didn't tell anybody until the next morning when they went to work. Now up here, it's Bob's something up the street. I can't think of the name of it. It was a restaurant, and they came at night and they took the exclusion off the building. You know, the windmill, not the windmill, the weather vane thing on the top, and they removed some names of the company. And the next day, the girls go there to open up the restaurant. It's padlocked. All the customers are standing in the parking lot, and we just closed it. They didn't want to get involved with telling people they're fired. They did it that way. What the hell was the name of it? Bob Evans? Nah, yeah, it might be Bob Evans. So anyway, restaurant up the street. That's the way they decided to close it up. I think that's it. All right, that's it.